Thank you, Trish. Nancy Pelosi up a creek without a paddle. Her party is fracturing before her very eyes. Impeachment fever infecting new Democrats every day. And tomorrow she's holding an emergency meeting to figure out how to hold things together. According to the Speaker of the House, everything's just fine. Nance?
Speaker, are you under increased pressure to impeach the president from your caucus?
No.
How do you address the division?
We don't have division. Meep, meep, meep. Now, here's the problem. Even senior Democrats are starting to jump on the impeachment bandwagon. She reportedly clashed with members of her party last night, and now some of them are going rogue.
I see a lot more people that believe that impeachable offenses occurred and would like to see an impeachment inquiry. They'd also like to see, as Speaker Pelosi would, that all the committees of jurisdiction proceed and get all the information they need. I think Speaker Pelosi is looking out for the interests of the American people, for democracy, for truth, and for the rule of law. She has a different way of getting there than I do. I wish we thought similarly.
You got problems, son. Go stick your head back in that chicken bucket. Even the party's youngest stars demanding Pelosi make a decision on impeachment, you guys.
Does impeaching without cause could be construed and is politically motivated? Choosing to not impeach when there's an abundance of cause could also be construed in a similar way.
Yeah, and I'm going to use the word construed and mean it. The latest push coming after former White House counsel Don McGahn skipped his testimony today before the House Judiciary Committee, and that made Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler pretty darn mad. Jerry?
When this committee issues a subpoena, even to a senior presidential advisor, the witness must show up. Our subpoenas are not optional. Mr. McGahn has a legal obligation to be here for this scheduled appearance. If he does not immediately correct his mistake, this committee will have no choice but to enforce the subpoena against him.
And he's going to have a tickle party. So how can House Speaker Pelosi hold Democrats together? Or are we watching the party implode before our very eyes? Let's meet tonight's panel. She is the co-author of America in the Age of Trump and a Fox News contributor. Jessica Tarlov is here, along with Fox News contributor and host of the Guy Benson radio show. It is Guy Benson, an attorney and executive director of the Lawfare Project. Brooke Goldstein is back. Welcome, everyone.
Hi.
Let's get right to it. Your party's falling apart.
Oh, I guess we're done then.
The end.
So there are a couple of things that I've been thinking about today. One is executive privilege and the argument that that shrinks when you open an impeachment hearing. So it's all well and good to say, let's keep investigating. That's what congressional oversight is all about. But you're going to get more Don McGahns if you open the formal impeachment inquiry. The other thing was looking back at Watergate. So in 1973, when they launched the inquiry, Nixon had a 65% approval rating and had just won in a landslide. Donald Trump has an approval on a good day about 40%, and by no calculation except his own, won in a landslide in 2016. So I'm starting to understand more, even though I'm still very scared of impeachment and the implications for us politically, of the argument that says, once people see the massive treasure trove of dirt here and the levels of obstruction of justice and the case to be made, that the American public is going to come around to it. So I guess we are falling apart.
I think the American public just sat through 2 years of a special counsel investigation and have read the fruits of that labor. But it feels like, and I understand Congress still has some questions, and that's viable, but pretending that the special counsel investigation didn't happen at all just seems weird.
Yeah, Mueller has the final word on the underlying question, which was what did Russia do and did they have American help, specifically from the Trump campaign, and the verdict on that is clear. So if the Democrats want to keep going and going and going, that's their business, but I think the American people are hitting the snooze button on that. They don't care anymore, and if you look at the polling, it's like in the 30s now, support for impeachment, which is why I think a big reason that Nancy Pelosi keeps begging her caucus. I know that we're all spun up about this in the Beltway, but average voters don't care, and this could actually redound to the president's benefit if they really push hard on that. And so I am delighted, frankly, to see, she said there's no divisions. That's like Baghdad Bob level stuff. They're holding an emergency meeting tomorrow.
Where they're fighting,
to
and
let
there
them
are
have their feelings come out about this.
Of those meetings, and you have members of the caucus who are very vocally and very adamantly talking about running in the opposite direction of their speaker. So Steve Cohen has obviously lost his mind. You know, he talks about having to impeach the president because President Clinton was impeached over sex, and he said that President Trump is raping the country.
Yeah, I mean, how unhinged and ridiculous, and you have other Democratic members of Congress going out with rubber chickens. It's just like a dog and pony show at this point.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the same guy. Okay. There you go. Theatrics. But to me, you know, I find the Democratic Party very troubling because it's clear they're having an identity crisis. And I don't understand Nancy Pelosi because on the one hand, she kowtows to the extremists like Ilhan Omar. You know, they couldn't even pass a resolution condemning anti-Semitism. And on the other hand, she's pushing back against these radicals. And yes, the party is divided, but both sides stand for the same thing. And it's just how anti-Trump are you? And that doesn't poll good. If you go to the average American on the street and you say, what is the Democratic Party platform? They say, impeach. It's anti-Trump. And that's not going to win you an election.
You have members like Lucy McBath in Georgia who comes from a pro-Trump district, and she's like, this is the last thing we need to be talking about right now.
Well, you know as well as I do the realities of the 2018 election. We flipped 40 seats. 35 of them are held by members who are part of something called the New Democrat Coalition, who are moderates. So the extremes are actually not dominating the party in any way. Nancy Pelosi...
But where do they stand on impeachment? Because I think that's a pretty critical block of, especially freshmen, congressmen and women.
100%. A lot of them also from the intelligence community who would have a better understanding of what was actually in the Mueller report necessarily than your average run-of-the-mill representative. I don't know what their records are specifically on this. I don't know who's for it and who's not. I think in the next few weeks, and if we hear from Bob Mueller, that might change things on this front. But they are focused on re-election, and we ran on health care. We didn't run on impeachment at all. That's how we flipped those districts, and that's how we'll do it again in 2020. So the message...
You're running out of time, though, because this whole impeachment thing has reached fever pitch, and now they're trying to push it to the critical point where it is all-encompassing, and I think that's suicide for your party. I really do.
And
I think it's
a good candidate. Like, yeah, focus. You want to win back the White House. If Trump is such a terrible guy, put out a good candidate who's going to win the election.
Let's be realistic.
Any person who wants to be president shouldn't be talking about impeachment and shouldn't be making it seem like an easy and normal process if that's the job they want, because they can be unseated just as easily. Move on now with more impeachment talk, including Republican Congressman Justin Amash. He's not backing down from his calls to impeach the president. The GOP isn't happy with the needling Michigander. In fact, top House Republican Kevin McCarthy said Republican voters will make Amash pay at the ballot box. Kev?
Justin is one person with one opinion. It's out of step with this conference, and it's out of step with America. I think when it comes to actions, I think the constituents will have the final say.
South Carolina Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, he agrees, claiming absolutely no Republicans will follow Amash's lead. But despite the negative comments from colleagues, the president calling him a loser and gaining a primary challenger, the Freedom Caucus, of which he is a founding member, formally condemning his comments. Amash says he's not going to change his mind.
Have you gotten any pressure from Republican leaders to kind of tone it down in terms of impeachment?
No, and their pressure doesn't have influence on me. I mean, I really am not concerned about what Kevin McCarthy thinks about it.
They're kind of dismissing what you're saying. They're saying you've always been an outlier, is what McCarthy said to or other members.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's an outlier in other ways, so it's like he can say that if he likes, but that's fine. It doesn't bother me.
He's out lying through both sides of his mouth. So is Amash standing up for the Constitution, or is he just trying to make headlines and maybe make a run of his own in 2020 as a libertarian? So he was pretty much caucus blocked by the Freedom Caucus.
Thank you for that tee-up, Kennedy. I appreciate the play on words. I think that his colleagues, because there was discussion that they might throw him out of the Freedom Caucus, and they were like, okay, that's too far. We're not going to do that, which I agree with. The whole point of this is The definition of impeachment and what is impeachable is up to members of Congress. He's a duly elected member. He has his opinion. I looked at his tweets. I strongly disagree with what he had to say about Bill Barr. I disagree with his calculus on impeachment. But I don't think that this is some sort of grave sin against the party, although I understand why some people are growing frustrated with him. I am intrigued by the libertarian presidential run rumors. This would make sense if that's what he's gravitating towards, but I don't want to put motives into his mouth or into his head.
No, according to the congressman, this is about what he read in the report.
Yeah, and
he said this was a painful decision for him to come to, and he didn't want to have to make a statement like this, but he felt obligated to based on what he read. He said it has nothing to do with the potential run, and that's why he's not seeking extra publicity. Someone who is trying to raise their profile would be on every primetime show right now.
That's right.
But it's interesting what he's doing, because he's uniting Republicans in a way that we didn't see coming, and he's dividing Democrats.
Right, and that's why I think dissent is so healthy. And I don't, even though I disagree with him, I don't think that there should be calls to stick to the party platform at all costs. I was born
Especially
and
from the
raised,
Freedom Caucus.
Right.
There should be a little bit more freedom from the Freedom Caucus.
And up in the north, where we're truly free, you know, I was born and raised in Canada, and when I came to this country, you know, people always ask me, are you a registered Democrat or registered Republican? I'm neither. I'm an issue voter, and I never understood that whole party loyalty thing. I think dissent is part of a healthy democracy, and, you know, should be encouraged.
What do you think?
I think
Are you now a Justin Amash fan?
No, I wouldn't go that far, but I like him more than 3 days ago or whenever this came out. I think it's showing the worst sides of everybody. So the rush of Republicans, people who have been shared the caucus with him and have been happy colleagues with him for years, who respected his libertarian streak and his kind of intellectual honesty. It's not a new thing for him to defend his decisions.
No.
He tweets like that. He's that guy.
Puts every vote on Facebook.
Exactly. So that's disingenuous for people to say, you know, he votes mostly with Nancy Pelosi. He votes with Republicans over 70% of the time. He's a libertarian, so you would expect that he wouldn't be lockstep with the rhinos or whatever.
And the Constitution is his guide, and it's rare, I know, to see someone put Constitution over party.
Yeah.
And also talk so much about spending cuts and limiting the size of government, but
which is only usually an election year talking point. I just want to say also, there's a great picture of him today outside on the Capitol, actually talking to students and explaining to them the constitutionality of his decision. You don't see that very often from lawmakers, so that was exciting.
Here, Justin. All right. Maybe not everyone feels that way. The panel is returning in just a little bit. However, President Trump calls the trade fight with China a little squabble. China's president preparing for a long-term battle. Could this turn things into a global trade war? And what does that mean for you? I'll ask the mooch. Anthony Scaramucci is next. Why you always call me when you're high? Okay, is President Obama's Attorney General Loretta Lynch now calling former FBI Director James Comey a liar? Well, it seems like it. Here's the backstory. Back in 2017, Comey repeatedly testified under oath that Lynch directed him to call the Clinton email investigation a, quote, matter, and not an investigation. But Lynch said in recently revealed congressional testimony that she did no such thing. In fact, she told lawmakers last month that she was, quote, surprised that he characterized it in that way, and that she, quote, didn't direct anyone to use specific phraseology. It's no surprise that Comey would have lied about anything. But is this a sign of things to come now that the DOJ is investigating the investigators? The party panel is back. Jessica Tarloff, Guy Benson, and Brooke Goldstein. So I will start with you, because James Comey has alluded at several points that he's got some real nasty dirt on Loretta Lynch, but apparently he has his own emotional statute of limitations, and he's waiting to reveal that.
Right, but it's so interesting when you read Loretta Lynch's denial. It just wasn't believable. She said, you know, I referred to it as a matter, and I spoke about it, and I maybe told him, but I never instructed him to. But when you have the former Attorney General and the former head of the FBI basically pointing fingers at each other, I think it's a sign. I think it's a sign that they're scared. And why are they scared? Because of Attorney General Barr's investigation right now into the Steele dossier and into the Russia investigation, and it definitely is a sign of what's going to come.
Congress.
But also
inherent contempt. Lock them up.
But it's going to be more diversion away because this is the massive story, an attempt by the CIA and the FBI to undermine an American election. And that's why we have calls
John
for
Brennan's
impeachment.
still doing it. James
and calls
Comey's
for,
still doing it.
Collusion to divert our attention away from this major story that we're just getting into right now.
Who's lying here?
I get the sense that in this case, Loretta Lynch is parsing very heavily.
There's some parsing.
Yeah, so I
She's
think,
mincing and parsing, I think.
So if he comes out from the woods or wherever he spends his free time these days and clarifies, yes, in fact, she directed me to do this, and she gets asked that question point blank again, I get the sense that he probably is right on this one. And one of the first things I thought of is what you just said. He has intimated several times that there's more that he's got on her, and this is probably not a fight she wants to be having with him right now.
No, and she always got really squirrely when she was asked about
because he writes memos to himself all the time.
Dear James, you're so special and smart and wonderful.
He might have a memo to whip out of the desk.
I wish that I'd never let Bill Clinton on the plane. I wish that there was a latch inside the plane that didn't open the door.
So that's not exactly how I heard it, and it'll come to no surprise that I have a different take.
No, that's what she said after the tarmac.
But there are people, even we've heard leaked out of the various teams, that meeting was something that Bill Clinton wanted a lot more than Loretta Lynch, and he was like, I'm coming on up. And
she's the Attorney General, though. She's the one who has the responsibility, legal, ethical, and professional, to keep him off the plane.
I think that any conversation...
And to report the conversation, which she didn't. A reporter compared the tail numbers on the planes. That's how we found out about it.
Okay. I think that living in a world right now where we are talking about the gravity of the Mueller report, potential impeachment investigations, and that there's this desire to turn it all back around and get back into Hillary Clinton's email server and what happened on the tarmac is not something that's going to work for the American public. That's how I feel about it. In terms of who's lying there, Loretta Lynch...
sounds like Loretta Lynch was acting as Obama's personal attorney on this one.
Wingman,
and that is,
like giving the heads up, like Attorney General Barr, who called the White House, right, to talk to Donald Trump about the Mueller report before he said anything. My point is about with Loretta Lynch and her comments, actually, she talked about the fact that when they had this conversation, it was before a formal investigation had actually been launched. So it was the Clinton matter or the Clinton probe matter or whatever it was. And I tend to not want to think that law enforcement officials at this level are liars. I understand there's a lot of finger pointing going on right now, and Comey and Brennan is in on it, and Clapper is in on it.
It doesn't look good.
It doesn't look
not
good.
A good look.
But
and everyone should want this all aired out so it doesn't happen again, because the same thing could be happening right now. If you're worried about the relationship between Lynch and Obama, you should definitely be worried about the relationship between Trump and Barr, because the whole thing can happen again. Ooh. All right, thank you so much for being here, Brooke, Guy, and Jessica.
Thank
the
you.
Topical Storm is next, and it's very topical tonight.